Alright, real quickly I'm going through the agenda items and giving you guys some activities. Today it's probably just the two of you. I think Maeve has a sport event. But right now, what you guys are going to do is you have a poem that I want you to read. Today's focus is about reading and how you guys should read or strategies to read. I want to start off with that first because some of you guys have great reading skills. And if you have great reading skills, I want you to share with each other what those great reading skills are. Some of you guys might need more help with reading, and the problem is if you can't read well or if you can't read critically or deeply about something, it might hurt you when it comes to analysis because you might not be understanding the what. Now, I talked about how the what is not necessarily something you want to put a lot about in your analysis papers, but you still got to understand the what before you can do an analysis of something. So what I want you guys to do right now is I'd like you to read a poem by Hughes. It's one of my favorite poems of all time. It's also incredibly short. It's called Suicide Note. I want you to read it, and I want you to try to make meaning of it. What does this poem make you think about? Does it remind you of anything? What are you noticing in terms of how it's put together? I know it's only got, I think, 2 words. The poem's not in front of me because my computer just shut down. But the poem is incredibly short, and what is Hughes able to do in this very short amount of time? So think about it, pick it apart independently first, and then I want you guys to have a dialogue back and forth. No voice recordings today, but I do want you guys to talk to one another about what you think the poem means. So pause and go. So you just got done talking about Suicide Note. I'm curious what you guys came up with, and I'm going to share what I came up with. What I think about when it comes to this poem is the idea of Ophelia from Hamlet. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I believe you've both read Hamlet. It's an English 3 text. I'm hoping you did. But the reason why I think it's related to Ophelia is because there's strong evidence in the play that she kills herself. She has motivation to kill herself, and that's because Hamlet rejects her. And I think she probably purposely drowned herself. Some people argue it was accident. It's up to you, but if we believe that Ophelia did commit suicide, one of the reasons why she committed suicide was because of Hamlet, and Hamlet rejecting his attention and affection towards her. And it's interesting in this poem that the persona being the character of the poem, realize the persona of a poem is not the same thing as the author of the poem, right? I don't think Langston Hughes is writing this as himself, as a male kissing a river. I think he's writing it as a different persona. A female persona is what I get a stronger vibe towards. But this idea of kissing the river reminds me of Ophelia, because Ophelia was this, lovesick girl who was strung along by the love of her life, Hamlet, to the point where she had to kill herself because she no longer had that love from him. Now, if you came up with that interpretation, I think it connects to Foster. Now, there's a question, which is, how does this connect to the first chapter, which you read last night about Foster? If you haven't talked about that, I'd like you to talk about it now. So pause if you need to. But I think this connects to Foster because some of you guys, I've even read some blog posts already. Foster has a really great word right here, or it's a phrase. He put memory, symbol, and pattern, and I think that really sums up his main idea here. A lot of literature we remember from other pieces of literature. Like, we start to read something and we have deja vu, and that's not accidental. You'll learn from this book that a lot of the literature out there is recycled. It's just recycled in new ways. And that's why when I read this, I think of Ophelia, because I've read Hamlet. And one of Foster's big arguments in the introduction is the fact that you guys need to read a lot, because if you read a lot, you're going to be able to pick up on the patterns a little bit easier because you will be well versed in a lot of famous literature. Now, I want you guys to read another poem. It's called Hock Gems. What I'd like you to do is read it independently, annotate it always in terms of structure and design, and then I want you to try to figure out what the poem means. So what I really need you guys to do is next to the poem, when you get done, I want you to write down what you think it means in the margin for me. I'm going to read that because I want to see if you guys were... It's not that there's a correct answer, but there's an answer that people argue is the best meaning for the poem. So right now you're going to read the poem, you're going to annotate it and try to make meaning. When you get done, I want you to write down in the margin what you think it means, and then I want you guys to share and discuss. So go. So, what did Hoc Gems mean? What did it make you think about? I'm going to explain what I thought about it when I read it, and I'm going to also give you what some people consider is the correct interpretation. I originally was thinking something Greek, because it talks about the three sisters, and I thought about the fates. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Greek mythology, but if you've ever seen the movie Hercules, you will see that there's the three fates, and they're the three women that are able to predict the future and predict people's deaths and cut people's lifelines off. So at first that's what I was thinking. I did not really understand what it meant at first, if that makes you guys feel better. So if you caught on to what you think is the correct interpretation, great. The supposedly correct interpretation is Christopher Columbus. This is a poem about Christopher Columbus, and there's lots of different lines on there that reference or that support that. So right now, based on you finding out that it's probably Christopher Columbus, I want you guys to talk about how that's proven in the text. Like, what lines prove it's Christopher Columbus? I want you to talk that out. Now, if you already figured this out, you can skip this discussion right now. But if you didn't get it was Columbus, I want you to reread the poem, and I want you to talk out the evidence that proves it probably is Columbus. Go. Alright, so hopefully you guys were able to pick some different lines that prove it. Obviously this idea of the egg and the shape, talking about like the flat, talking about the three sisters, which is probably a reference to the three ships. Hoc Gems, because he had to, I think, talk to the Spanish government to get the money to even go on this voyage. There's a lot of different evidence going on. Now, the last big activity I want you to do is I want you to read chapter 1 of Foster. It starts on page 1. It's about quest. What I want you to do is I want you to read it to yourself, and I want you, as you read, to record on the handout what you're doing as you're reading. So here are two examples, and if you do these two things, you can write them down. When I'm reading, I have a tendency to visualize. I start to get pictures in my head of what they're describing. That's a very common reading strategy. A lot of people like books because they can visualize what's going on. So when I read, one of the things that I do all the time is I visualize. A second thing that I do when I read, and you will see it here, I highlight things that stand out to me as incredibly important. I'm a big highlighter or a big underliner. Now, one thing I hate is that you can't write in your textbooks, but maybe if this was on regular paper, would you highlight or underline? That could be a reading strategy. So what I want you guys to do is read the first chapter and record all the different things that you do when it comes to reading. What's going on in your brains? How do you read? Go. So you just got done recording all the different things that you do when you read. What I want you to do is have a conversation with each other and share what you do, and I want you guys to create a collaborative list of your favorite strategies or things that you want to do or plan to do. So if you can do that now, that's on the lower half of the handout. So share and collaborate. Go. Now, I'm going to share some reading strategies with you that I think are really helpful for AP Literature. Now, they might be helpful to you, they might not. They might be things you've already talked about. Right now, if they're things that you want to add to the list, please do so. When I read a book for AP Literature, I already told you this, but I highlight. When I get done reading, I always try to do a short reflection of what I read. So in a journal, in a notebook, maybe on a sticky note, when I get done reading a chapter, what will happen is I will debrief or reflect on what I read. So some of the things that I got out of this chapter is the idea of a quest. Everybody is on a quest, so I would write on my sticky note, a lot of literature follows a quest model, and it includes 5 different steps, including a person who's the quester. It includes a place to go. It includes a reason to go there. There's always some type of challenge, and there's also a real reason to go. Also, I make personal connections, or not personal connections, but literary connections, and I think about Liesel here. I think Liesel is a quester in several ways. She's young enough where she's going to be quest material. She goes to Germany to live with her foster parents because her mom can't take care of her. She faces many challenges, things as humorous and funny as Rudy trying to kiss her, obviously not being able to read, and all of those things. And I think the real reason why she had to go to this place was she had to find her identity and her independence, and she had to grow up. And I think if she wasn't able to live with all these different people on Himmel Street, I don't know if she would have been able to survive the war and live the life that she did. I think those people helped build her up. So that's just a real quick example of me connecting. Some other things that I definitely do, I definitely annotate. Now, you can't annotate in the books, so what I might do is annotate on a sticky note and stick it on here. If you notice, I always tab really important passages that I need to make sure that I can reference back to. A couple things that I also do is if there's a word I don't know, I obviously look it up. And I'm trying to think any other really good reading strategies. I talked about visualizing. There's 2 more. Rereading is important. It sucks to reread because you're putting more time and energy into it, but sometimes it's important for you to reread. If I'm reading a paragraph and I start to fade out, I stop. And then I go back and reread it again because I've probably just completely blanked out. Another good strategy is to slow down. A lot of people feel like they gotta read so fast and they have to read this piece of text in 10 minutes that they end up missing important materials. It's okay to read slowly, and if you're annotating or underlining, it's going to become a slower read anyway by default. So those are some strategies that I use. They're strategies I really recommend that you use, especially as we read through Foster, because he's going to give us all these theories, and they're very difficult to keep track of. So, to close out today, what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what this chapter is about in no more than 15 words. So, you can write up to 15 words. I want you to do this in your little notebook. Up to 15 words, I'd like you to tell me what the chapter is about. You're summarizing or putting the big ideas. Now, you don't have to do complete sentences. You can do fragments. You can do a list. That's fine, but you can't use more than 15 words. And the reason why I'm doing this, first is for you guys, it makes it easier. I don't need a 15-page summary. And second is the big ideas shouldn't take a whole page to explain, because if you start talking for 50 words, you're starting to do too much. Now, I want you to do that in your little books. What I need you to do is share what you thought about the chapter, what do you think about Foster to kind of close out today. And then your homework. Your homework is to read chapters 2 through 6. So chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's a chunky read. It's I think it's like 40 pages. But the reason why you're reading, first is his chapters are very quick. But for each chapter, you need to do a 15-word summary. No more than 15 words. So when you get done reading chapter 2, you're going to write down 15 words of summary. What is chapter 2's big idea? Then do chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 6. Bring those back in to me for Monday. If you have any questions, let me know. Another thing I need you to do is you need to show me your writer's notebooks. Hopefully I'll remember to ask you at the start of the hour. If I don't, I'm asking you now. So make sure you show me your writer's notebooks. And we are done for today. Have a good weekend. First week is done.